Apple Floppy Days, Commodore, Tandy Floppy Days, Atari, TI Floppy Days. The weekend comes, the disk drive hums, ready to code for you. These days we're all happy and free. Those floppy days, the games we play, you shared with me. Those days, Motorola, Intel 6502, graphics and text are there to view. Composite, color, or RGB, program fun for you and me.
Floppy Days is recorded in a live studio.
Inside PC Floppy Days, ST Amiga Floppy Days, Junior Sinclair Floppy Days, Classic Days, Microwaves, geeking all week with you. These days we're all happy and free. Those floppy days, the games we play, you shared with me. Those days, these floppy days are yours and mine. These floppy days are yours and mine. Floppy days.
The TRS-80 Model 3.
Introducing the Apple IIc.
Atari 1040 ST.
Commodore 64. What?
PC Junior, new from IBM.
Discover Atari. It's his Radio Shack Color Computer 3.
Introducing the Timex Sinclair 1000.
For computer, this is the one. Texas Instruments home computer.
A wonder computer of the 1980s. The Commodore VIC-20.
Hello and welcome to episode 143 of the Floppy Days Podcast for September 2024. I'm Randy Kindig, your host for this retro ride to the past of home computing. This month I'm continuing the series of interviews I've been doing recently with Paul Terrell. As we have discussed, Paul Terrell is a name well known in the annals of computer history, probably most famously for his kickstart of Apple Computer through the purchase of one of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak's first batches of Apple I computers for Paul's Byte Shop. The Byte Shop was a very early computer store that was one of the few that existed in the world at the time. In this interview, we continue to focus primarily on the Byte Shop, how it got started, what it was like, and much more. This is part 3 of a 4-part series on just that topic with Paul. If you want to know what it was like to run a computer store in those days, this is the interview for you. Along the way, you'll learn even more about just what the home and hobby computer scene was like in those days. In future episodes, Paul and I will discuss other topics around his long and distinguished career, such as the aforementioned dealings with the fledgling Apple computer, and other ventures in which Paul was involved after the Byte Shop, including a business that rented software. Before we go on, let's not forget to mention some of the great storefronts that support our vintage computing hobby in a big way. 8bitclassics.com is run by my friend Corey Colts, and it's a great place to get vintage computer items like video cables, power supplies, cartridges, upgrades, and more for a wide variety of vintage computer platforms. Corey's been a friend of the show for some time, and I really appreciate his support of the podcast. Check out his site. Arcade.shopper.com, run by my friend Greg McGill, is another terrific site to get vintage computer items. Greg has a wide variety of hard-to-find items for a large number of platforms. If anything shows out of stock, just ping Greg through the contact form, and he can check whether he has or can get more of the item for you. And finally, FutureVision Research is a more recent vendor managed by my friend Brian Cox. If you're in the need of a FujiNet for any of the official platforms, which would be Apple II, Atari 8-bit, Coleco, Atom, or Coco, Brian has what you need. He also has some cool soldering kits for whatever skill level you are at, including beginner. I also want to mention those listeners who appreciate the show enough to donate through patreon.com. I really appreciate you guys, and it helps offset the cost of running the podcast. Regarding that, I've created some tiers for paid members and have come up with some ways to reward those who are generous enough to monetarily support the Floppy Days podcast on Patreon, such as early access to videos of interviews, such as being brought to you in audio form in this episode. Visit patreon.com/floppydays to see more details concerning the rewards for supporters. I just want to say on that topic that it's always my intention to make all content available to everyone at no cost, while at the same time providing some benefits for those generous enough to support the podcast. I hope you agree I've come up with a good compromise. Please let me know your thoughts and enjoy.
Hi, this is Paul Terrell. Here's to the followers of Floppy Days, with a passion of the past events that ignited the personal computer revolution, from someone that was there at the time and a willing participant. I was involved in the first sales of Microsoft Basic to Data Terminals and Exidy Incorporated, which created the first software company in personal computing. And I bought the first 50 Apple I computers with a COD purchase order, which provided $25,000 of seed capital to start Apple Incorporated. The personal computer revolution is as significant as the Industrial Revolution was, and they say history repeats itself. A generation which ignores history has no past and no future. If you want to understand today, you have to search yesterday. So let's understand today with Floppy Days podcasts of yesteryear. Thank you.
Okay, now for new acquisitions and what I've been up to. Last month, I discussed my recent trip to VCF Southeast in Atlanta, Georgia, and the great time that I had there. The big thing I've been up to this month was a trip to another show, this time VCF Midwest in the Chicago area. I also picked up a few new acquisitions there, so this recount will again cover both topics. First of all, my impressions of the show. This year was a new venue for the show, having completely outgrown the old venue in Elmhurst, Illinois. I do have to say, as large as the old venue was, and it served its purpose for several years, the living quarters in that hotel were old and run down. My wife and I stopped staying on site due to the condition of the rooms. This new venue was at the Renaissance Schaumburg Convention Center in Schaumburg, Illinois. Schaumburg is on the northwest side of Chicago. I have to say the venue was extremely impressive. Not only was the show area larger, 50,000 square feet, but the hotel is considerably nicer than the old one. My wife and I stayed on site and were suitably impressed. The event center is so large that VCF Midwest was only one of the events going on at the same time at that conference center. 50,000 square feet is a lot of room, and it provided ample room for the large number of exhibitors and vendors, while still having suitably large aisles so that there was room to move around. To me, it didn't really feel like the vendor and exhibitor area was larger than the old venue, honestly, but I think that was simply an optical illusion. The old venue had a large room with 3 different sections, and then there were vendors scattered all the way through the long hallway and filled up the lobby that there was that went into the convention area. In the new venue, it was all contained in one very large room. I suspect that the more scattered nature of the old venue made it seem larger than it was. On the opening day, there was a substantial line of people waiting to get in and pick up a t-shirt. The event felt like it was well attended, especially on Saturday. There was a free table, of course, presentations in separate nearby rooms, and one of the usual highlights of the event, a huge auction. I didn't get to any of the presentations, and the auction was not even standing room only. In other words, by the time I got to the auction, there was no room even to stand and watch the auction. As I usually do at these events, I was an exhibitor and had a single table. On one end, I had a display of antique podcast information, stickers, and cards, and on the other end, a second display for Floppy Days information, stickers, and cards. In the middle of my table, I had a display of the Auric Atmos hooked to a TV monitor and the Erebus virtual drive attached to load software. I was very pleased at the uniqueness and response of that computer display, as the Auric Atmos was virtually unknown here in the US, and I saw no other Atmos computers in the show. Many people came by just to get a better look at the machine. Its small footprint and colorful case design really does draw people in. As seems to be the case lately, I did run into an unexpected issue with my computer display. For the Atmos, as with many of the machines that produce RGB output, I use an RGB to SCART cable routed into a SCART to HDMI converter box to get the best output I can out of the computer. The SCART to HDMI converter decided to crap out on me at the show, even though I had just tested the entire setup just before heading out for the show. Luckily, a close fellow exhibitor and good friend loaned me a converter to use for the duration. Concerning new acquisitions, there was plenty of opportunity to pick up new items, with items being sold throughout the event venue. I really didn't pick up very much at all, and the things I did get were small, but one thing I picked up was an Indus GT drive. For those familiar with the Atari 8-bit world, you've probably heard of the Indus GT drive. In the ads, they say, looks like a Ferrari, drives like a Rolls, parks like a Beetle. And via Atari Wiki, it says it's by far one of the most popular aftermarket drives for the Atari 8-bit computer. With its black case, it is a great-looking, whisper-quiet, and super-performing drive. Now, concerning its styling, it has an LED readout, has a dust-cover door, half-height profile, and all-black finish. It also has an option to install an SRAM charger, which literally turns the floppy drive into a Z80 CP/M computer that you then use your Atari as a terminal to access. There's a version of CP/M 2.2 that works on this CP/M configuration, or this computer configuration. It's smaller than the Atari 1050 drive and much smaller and lighter than the 810. Just as with the Commodore 8-bit drives, Atari drives all have a disk controller built in, making them intelligent drives. The Atari branded drives used a version of the 6502 processor for that disk controller, but the Indus here, they decided to go with a Z80 processor. My interest in acquiring one of these was to play around with running CP/M on it. It's unbelievably cool that you can run CP/M using the CPU of the drive, essentially using it as a full-blown computer. Jason Moore at his AtariProjects.org site has a great tutorial on doing this. This is going to be a lot of fun to play with. Next up, the FujiNet. FujiNet for the Coco has just gone official from the FujiNet team, and a few people are starting to make the device for sale. As I already have the Atari 8-bit, Coleco Adam, and Apple versions, I certainly wanted to get the Coco version as soon as it was available. Just as I was getting ready to buy one, a friend of the show, Matthew Spence, sent me an email saying that he wanted to donate one to the podcast and would come by my table at VCF Midwest and deliver it. He was true to his word and was generous enough to bring it by. I haven't been able to try it yet, but I'm hoping to get a chance to do so at the upcoming Tandy Assembly. Thank you again, Matthew. I really appreciate it. Another Atari 8-bit device I've always had a desire to get and try out for some reason is a 1050 to PC cable. What this device does is allow you to hook up an Atari SIO equipped disk drive to your modern computer. Then, from your modern computer, you can read floppy disks, write to disks, etc. using the real Atari floppy drive. A friend of mine in our local computer club, Chris Belcher, made this cable and brought it to the show, along with a collection of other devices that he has soldered together. Just another cool thing to play with. The same friend who made the 1050 to PC cable also soldered together an upgrade for the VTech Pre-Computer 2000, which I have mentioned on an earlier episode of Floppy Days. While the Pre-Computer 1000 doesn't support it, the 2000 model has always supported an external RAM cartridge. It includes basic commands that allow you to treat the RAM like a RAM disk. There's also the option for putting a battery on the cartridge so that you can retain what you store on that RAM disk. VTech made these RAM cartridges back in the day, but they're impossible to find these days. Chris was able to determine how to create one and solder them up. This is truly needed in the community and makes the Pre-Computer 2000 a little more useful. Overall, concerning the event, concerning VCF Midwest, it was really a very fun event, and I want to thank Jason Timmons and company for putting it on. I can highly recommend this show and will always attend, assuming nothing major comes up in the future. The new venue is fantastic. If this is not the largest vintage computer show in the country, I don't know which one would surpass it. This is a must-do event. That's it for what I've been up to and new acquisitions this month.
Okay, this is Howell Ivey, the designer of the Sorcerer computer and one of the owners of Exity. And you are listening to the Floppy Days Podcast.
Okay, now let's talk about remaining computer shows for the remainder of 2024. I do want to remind everybody that I've created a shared list of those upcoming shows and published it to the Floppy Days website. Go to the link provided in the show notes here, or use the link at floppydays.com and you'll have access to the show list for the current year that I always keep updated. So as I'm recording this coming weekend, just 2 days away from the time I'm recording right now, there are two big shows going on. So both of these are September 27th through the 29th. The first is the Portland Retro Gaming Expo over there in Portland, Oregon at the Oregon Convention Center. And then in the Midwest, in Springfield, Ohio, is Tandy Assembly, being held at the Courtyard by Marriott Springfield, and which I will be attending. One of these days I'll get out to the Portland show as well, or instead, but I will be at Tandy Assembly this year. Then October 25th through the 27th is AMI West in Sacramento, California, an Amiga show. October 26th, so that same weekend, is the Chicago TI International World Fair at the Evanston Public Library in Evanston, Illinois. November 9th through 10th is the Retro Computer Festival at the Center for Computing History in Cambridge, England. And finally, to wind out the year, December 5th through the 8th in Gdańsk, Poland, is Silly Venture Winter Edition. So that's it. Several shows have already been announced for 2025. So starting next month, I will probably include some of the shows that are occurring in the first quarter of 2025 when I talk about shows. But hopefully you can make it out to a show yet in the remainder of this year. And if you make it to Tandy Assembly, please come by and say hi. And that's it for upcoming shows.
My name is Vic Tolome. I was the Vice President of Software at Exity Inc. in both the Data Products Division and the Video Games Division for the 8 years, starting in 1979 through, it was 87. And I've been talking with Randy Kindig for the Floppy Days Podcast. And we've been having a nice conversation about those times.
Okay, I want to remind everyone I've created a new segment for the show called Meet the Listeners. Thus far, I've had segments with Brian Cox and Marshall Walker. I don't have any for this month, but I will publish them as I have them. I want to remind everyone I really would like you to join the segment. All you have to do is produce a 3 to 5 minute audio file where you introduce yourself and your vintage computer journey. Tell everyone how you got started with vintage computers, what you had back in the day, how you got back into the hobby, what vintage machines you have today, etc. Then just send the audio file to me at floppydays@gmail.com and I'll publish it on a future Floppy Days episode. Thanks in advance, and I can't wait to hear your story. Okay, and now the interview with Paul Terrell, owner and proprietor of the Byte Shop. And this is part 3 of the 4-part series on this topic. And here's Paul. So, Paul, I want to talk a little bit more about the day-to-day operations of the store and what that was like. First of all, I understand, and I read somewhere, that you strongly encourage your store managers to attend the Homebrew Computer Club. Is that accurate, and why was that?
Yeah, the stores, obviously our customer was the hobbyist, and the Homebrew Computer Club being there, obviously the stores in San Francisco Bay Area, had access to homebrew and their meetings at Stanford Linear Accelerator. And so, this was a gathering of people that would, become customers to the store. So, a lot of the people that we saw at the homebrew meetings were coming into the store and showing up there and so forth. So it was a breeding ground, for customers, and so we would tell the other store people to, get more involved, with the hobby aspect. We really were not dealing with your typical consumer. It was a specialty retailing operation that we were running. So you wanted to know, where your customers were and how to get to them. And a good analogy that I used to use back in the day was the stereo operations and the people that were into the music and Pacific Stereo was a big chain of stores in Northern California. That I would point to our dealers that this is where we're going with this. This is going to be personal computers are going to be so popular that we're going to be dealing with the consumer marketplace like these Pacific Stereo stores. And actually one of the people, the guy that was running, who founded Pacific Stereo and later sold it to CBS, I believe his name was Anderson. But at any rate, he was one of the people that I was talking to when I was out looking to raise money for the Byte Shops. He and I actually, he flew his corporate jet to San Jose, and I got together with him, and we went around, to show him the Byte Shop operation and make him familiar with what we were doing. He was one of the people that I was seeking to when basically our issue was we were running out of money, to grow the operation, and so I had to get investment into it, and so I was looking, everywhere that you could, venture capital and other people, other chains that were maybe interested in acquiring us and so forth. But to get back to your point on the actual stores and the operation, my role was principally to get together with these guys, that were the owners of the Byte Shops, and try and give them the vision that I had, for when we started the operation, and obviously give them the big picture. When you're a visionary, you see things that other people don't necessarily see, and what we were in all of the Byte Shop owners were embarking in an area where everything was new to us, and a lot of these guys had no idea about retailing and what the potential was. A lot of them, the potential was that they just had their small store, little business there, and the business was kind of a hobby for them. They were able to work at what they liked, and there's nothing better than that for employment. So
absolutely.
But yeah, so once again, the association with the homebrew marketplace and those people, you got to know them and go there. But where we really want to go, in terms of revenue sales for your stores, we want to get to the consumer market, and as our products developed from kits to finished products, assembled and tested. The Apple II is a good example, of that we carried in the stores, and more and more of the manufacturers that were doing kits ultimately converted over to assembled units 100%. But in the early days, the operations that you talk about here in the stores were a back room assembling the kits into finished product for people that couldn't do the assembly work. So that was a big part of our business, and we looked for those kind of people, to help us out in the stores.
So you're telling me some of the computers, at least, or some of the stuff that you sold, was kits, and people could either assemble them themselves, or for a fee, you guys would assemble those for them. Is that right?
Yeah, the manufacturers made tremendous profit when they sold things in kit form, because there was no labor involved, and literally right. they were able to make a lot of profit in kits when they had to hire. And we were very close to the transition from going from kits into assembled units with the MITS Altair people. They were one of the companies that they were the people that were starting the personal computer thing from the beginning. Ed Roberts and the Altair 8800. But at the price point that he introduced, $349, it was just parts. It was no assembly, no labor involved in the cost of it. So, and he could produce a lot of kits. I mean, it didn't take a lot of time to throw a bunch of parts in a bag and mail it to somebody. And particularly, as he was going from mail order into retail, they would get all these checks in the mail, and And if somebody's written you a check and you've deposited it in your bank account, you want to fulfill that order. So the quickest you can get it out, and of course, for the manufacturers to provide an assembled and tested unit, that could take literally days and weeks to respond to an order and a payment that was made in advance. And there was a lot of advanced payment stuff going on in the industry at the time. Commodore was doing the same kind of thing, with their products and so forth. So, it was important at the kit phase of computer retail for us to, in the stores, the store owners needed to have technicians and people that would moonlight from all the companies around there, and there were plenty of electronic manufacturers in California and the Bay Area and Los Angeles and so forth. So where we had the density of computer stores, there were always people that would want to hang out and participate. We had some pretty reputable guys. One of them was Steve Leninger, who was over at National, and Steve was moonlighting with Todd Anderson down there in the Santa Clara store at night. He was building computers for Todd, and he was the guy at National that was in charge of their microprocessor, the SCAMP microprocessor.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Steve because I know he worked at one of your stores, and I just recently, like 2 weeks ago, got an interview with him where he talked about his days, including the time he spent working at your, one of your stores. Did you actually have much interaction with Steve? You said he was at a different store, right?
Yeah, he was at a different store, but the interaction came later. Once again, it came from the business side. When I was out looking for investment in the overall Byte operation, one of the people that I contacted, Charles Tandy, the Forbes magazine had come out with an article about Tandy, and he was on the cover. And I read the article about him, and it was really an interesting guy for what he had done with not only Tandy, but the Radio Shack operation, of course, was what I was focusing in on. And his business primarily in those days, the early days, were the CB radio business, and they were. Charlie also did manufacturing. He wasn't just doing Radio Shack, but they were manufacturing products under their own label. Realistic is what they called it. And so I saw in the Tandy operation an opportunity there, for them to move into computers. From CB radio, because that was sort of dying out, and computers were coming in. So it seemed to me a natural thing to get a hold of him, and find out if he was interested in buying my operation. Because if he were to purchase Byte Shop, he'd come off the ground running with 58 stores that I had at the time. And of course, Charlie was a pretty shrewd businessman. He actually got in the corporate jet and flew out to San Jose and walked to my stores. And one of the stores that he went into was the Byte Shop in Santa Clara. And he had the opportunity to meet Steve Leninger, the technician that was in there. And of course, Steve was the guy that he hired to design the TRS-80 for Tandy Corporation. So,
right.
that's it
That's
was
funny.
in that time frame that Steve and I, we're having discussions about things.
Do you remember any details about those discussions? I mean, were you discussing what Tandy had asked about, or?
It actually, most of my interaction with Steve came later after Byte Shop when I was doing Exity and the Sorcerer computer. Okay,
I see.
because Tandy had hired two people. Steve was the hardware person for them, and then he had somebody at the same level at Tandy that was in charge of their software, and so my interest, obviously, if I was going to clone the TRS-80 in the Sorcerer, the capabilities of it, and try and do one-upmanship with my computer, it was the hardware piece of it, and so he and I had many discussions, and of course we would run into each other at trade shows and things, and reminisce about our beginnings at Byte Shop, and where we were going from there. But he did very well with Tandy, and I did very well with all of the things I got involved with in Silicon Valley.
That's interesting. Okay. So I guess I'm curious, you've talked about a lot of the things that you had in your store. You had computers that you sold. You already talked about the magazines that you had in there in the big display of Byte magazines. What else did you sell? Did you actually sell software and books, and obviously you sold peripherals, I would think. What exactly was the specific list of things that you sold in the store?
Well, the books were a big piece of what we did, because obviously, you're educating the public here, and magazines, printed material, anything that you could get related to, the products, that would help people understand, what they could do with a personal computer. That was important. So, a big portion of the store was dedicated to not just books and magazines, but also the supplies, because, floppy disks and paper tape, and everybody was using teletypes to hook up to their personal computer, to their Altair, if they didn't have or they didn't have input and output on these computers, like the Altair computer, and actually we had we created our own machine called the Byte 8, and I within Byte Incorporated, I had a manufacturing operation there, so that our stores could get more profit margin for themselves, and also profit margin for Byte Incorporated, because we made a good margin in the manufacturing operation as well. But the products in the stores, supplies were a big piece of it, and the books and magazines. As a matter of fact, I've got a copy. Here's a Byte number 1 issue of the Byte magazine, which is what we, that's where we got the name Byte Shop. And I think we talked about that in an earlier segment.
Did you keep that from back then? Is that something you've kept all that time, or?
Oh yeah, it was. No, it was actually the Virginia Pesky was the publisher of Byte magazine, and Carl Helmers was the editor of the magazine. So Carl was the guy that was putting all the content in, and Virginia was running the business. So I wanted to develop a good relationship with them. So basically, we would buy all the Byte magazines we could get our hands on. We not only got the current issue that came out, but any older issues that they had. I would also buy those from Virginia, and then in the stores, what I would do is I actually took a processor technology display case that they gave to me. It was a really nice walnut display case, and I put the Byte magazines in there, all of the different issues that I had in there, and then I called Virginia up and I told her, I said, I think I'm going to send you a picture of myself and the in this Byte magazine display case that I have here, and I said, I call your magazine the jewels of the Byte Shop operation here, I think what you would like to do for your subscriptions and business is maybe to put a page in the magazine that shows how important your magazine is, and what kind of what people think of it and so forth, and she did that. And so I was seeing in later editions of the Byte magazine, the Byte Shop being presented there. It wasn't costing me anything to do that. So that was the kind of thing you did with your different suppliers and things. You tried to work angles where we were kind of strapped for cash. Everybody in the business was, because there was so much demand out there that any way you could network with somebody to help their business and help yours at the same time, giving you exposure, you would do that. So that's what we did with Byte.
So what was the vibe like in the Byte Shop? Was it busy? Did you have a lot of regulars who hung out all the time? What were the decorations and the furniture like in there? I'm just curious what it was like inside the store.
Yeah, basically, when you walked into the Byte Shop in Mountain View, you would the first thing you would run into would be the display cases where we had the books and magazines and supplies and things. That was a popular area. Kind of, when you go into a supermarket today, they've got the end aisle products that are highlighted, sort of thing, and that's what I was picking up on, was trying to the things that people wanted, to have them right there for them, so they could, if they wanted to get in and get out, they could do that. And so in the front of the store there, the front room, you basically had those items, supplies and the books, and then what we did for the computers themselves is we would stack the boxes. When they came in from the off the shipping dock, we would just stack them up in the store. It was a big open space, and then on the top of the box we would have the what was inside the boxes, and literally people could then just take a box over to the cash register and out the door they go. The actual I called it the demo room, was the back room in the store, and so you'd have to go through a door to go into this room, and then the room in there was more of everything was running in the demo room. So if you saw the kit out there and you were interested in this or that, you could go back in the demo room and get on one of the computers that was there. We had the computers all set up so that people could actually do hands-on with them. And that was probably the most popular area in the store. But there were some things that, for instance, in the front of the store there, that front room, we actually, in the windows, we had big windows at the Byte Shop Mountain View looking out onto the street. And so I would set up a display there where people that were just driving down the road could look in and see. And that's where we had our Altair computer with the Krememco Dazzler card in there, running the kaleidoscope program and so forth. And once again, because that was an operational computer, I actually would have some of the customers would come in and they just go right over to that and sit down on the windowsill and start playing with the with that computer. So we were trying to give everybody as much hands-on opportunity as we could, to help them make their decision that handle this kind of thing, and they'd want to get involved with it. So they'd make their purchase for it. But and then the other room that we had in the space that we were leasing there was the office area, and that's where I was actually running the all of the Byte operation, from the office area there. Another thing that we had, which was just kind of a fun thing in the open area, just as a sort of an attention giver, I had gotten a Scientific Data Systems, an SDS 940 mainframe computer. It was a scientific computer. There's a company down in Los Angeles called SDS, Scientific Data Systems, that made the Sigma line of computers. And the 940 was actually a discrete transistor computer that was superseded the Sigma series. They got more larger and more powerful because aerospace was buying all of these kind of products, and so the 940, I found a surplus one available, so I ended up buying it to have this thing that was 6 feet high and about 4 feet wide, and sitting in the corner of the store, and had an Altair computer sitting on top of it, which was more powerful than the 940 that was below it, So I was showing people how, the 940 was tens of thousands of dollars, and the Altair was, $499.
Even then, you could show the improvements in computer technology, from the older mainframes to the newer micros. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think
the other reason for that was that part of our customer base coming in, the people coming through the front door, a lot of them were people out of the magazine industry that were interested in what was going on here and wanted to write about these products and these stores and what was going on. So to be able to show them things like there's a mainframe computer over there, a little personal computer is more powerful than it would give them some thought for an article that they might go and then write about. We once again, going back to our type of customer that came into the store, it was pretty varied, and even investment people, venture capital people would come in all the time, and they would ask questions about this company or that company that they were looking at making an investment in, or what have you. But and I just had this one little office space in the back. So quite often, what I would do is, if I knew these people were coming, I would take them over to 2 doors away from me was Frankie, Johnny, and Luigi's Pizza Parlor, Italian restaurant, and I'd go over there and sit them down in a booth, and we'd have a lunch meeting and talk about this, and of course, the most significant event that ever happened for Byte Shops was when Jack Wilson from Business Week came down for his little interview. We spent 3 hours over in Frankie and Johnny's, discussing what was going on, and then he ended up writing a really nice article, about personal computing in Business Week, and we got a lot of notoriety and out of that. I mean, like I say, it was probably the most significant event in the history of Byte Shop for us.
Paul, do you have that Business Week magazine where that was published?
Yeah, I do. I actually have a copy of that. It was July 12th, I believe, was the issue that I have. That's the one that has a picture of me, behind the counter in the Byte Shop, and the statement under it, which says Terrell plans franchising in California, and that created all of this.
All the mail that you got. Yeah.
The post office coming in with mail bags and dumping them on the floor and saying, well, you're the only Byte Shop, so this must be for you, and you're in California. So
I bet that was fun.
Addresses on these letters are unbelievable because they don't know that you're at, you're on 1039 El Camino Real, so. Anyway, yeah.
Is there? I was trying to find a link to the digital version of that particular magazine, so I could include that in the show notes, but I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have you possibly scanned that or anything?
I think in the earlier segment I gave you a wrong date. It was the July 12th is the magazine that had article about the personal computer aspect of it, and the week before was the other one, and I think I had those mixed up when I talked to you last time. I think I gave you the July 6th or 7th, whatever 7 days less than 12 is. Actually,
okay. Well, I could not find a digital copy of it, so maybe we can get one tracked down so we can include a link.
Yeah,
for people.
I can send you what I have of it. I can take a picture and
okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
So was most of your clientele computer enthusiasts or early adopter business customers, or was it a mixture of both?
I would say that it was definitely the hobbyist, initially, and that we did see the transition, to productivity was the next thing to come along, rather than full-blown business computers. What was happening, and actually it was the advent of the Apple II and VisiCalc. VisiCalc was the application that really drove Apple II sales when that company came out with the spreadsheet that would run on Altair or on Apple computers. There was a lot of demand for that, and of course a spreadsheet can be used in many different ways. It was what we called productivity software, and people would use it for business applications. But when I think of business applications, I think of general ledger and payroll and accounts receivable, accounts payable, standard business operations. and we did get to that point when we had the fully assembled and tested computers, and when we had more disk storage. One of the things early on was the storage capability, and how big your programs could be, and what they could execute on, and it took until the hard disk drives came into being created or invented and available for sale. Shugart, the guys that were in the floppy disk business, ended up doing the first hard disks as well. So, it was Alan Shugart was the founder of Shugart, and then he eventually sold Shugart to Xerox and went off and started another company, and he did Seagate, and then he did his hard disk, and Alan was one of the people that would come by our store. He lived over in Santa Cruz, and so he'd come over the mountain and see what was going on in the valley, or if he was over for a meeting, we would see him show up. So, but it was what the capacity of the computer would really drive the audience, and so and the creation of the software. So if you could come into a Byte Shop and for a few $1,000s put together a computer system with with the input and output terminal, the storage capacity of hard drives, and then the software being able to run a general ledger program and so forth. That was going to drive the business part of it, and that was just coming into being as I was exiting the Byte Shop operation. We were starting to have manufacturers of bigger computer systems that could run these kinds of programs and bring them to the price level that the Byte Shops were at. We were literally trying to stay in the low end of the marketplace in terms of cost or price to the consumer or to the customer. And so, we were very focused on staying away from mini computers and mainframe. Was not our business, and our business was in the microcomputers and the microprocessors and the products and that were manufactured for that. But we did have companies like, for instance, Data General was one of the companies that decided that they were going to get into the micro marketplace from the mini computers. They were doing Data General Nova mini computers. Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, was doing mini computers, and everybody was looking at the personal computer area and trying to figure out how they could get hardware and their pricing to the level that it could be sold to consumers. And not all of the manufacturers were interested in doing that, but there were some. And of course, with the notoriety that we had at Byte Shop through media and so forth, we would get calls from all of these guys. Ed DeCastro from Data General called me when he came up with the Eclipse computer, and he was targeting that to be cheaper than Digital Equipment. His competitors' smallest mini computer was the PDP-8, and he was able to achieve that, and so he felt that he had a product that he could sell to Byte Incorporated for their Byte Shops. And when we did a business with him, when we gave him a purchase order and he started shipping product to us, that was going to drive the customer base to change to business people coming in to purchase these machines and the software that ran on them for their applications.
I am curious, and we'll explore that a little more, what you were just talking about, but did you ever have any celebrities come into the store?
Any which?
Celebrities?
Celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, where I first ran into the celebrities were at the computer shows.
Okay.
Jim Warren was doing the computer fair up in San Francisco, and and I knew Jim from the Homebrew Club, as well as Jim was publishing stuff, and we were selling his things in our store. But then he decided that he wanted to get into show business, and so for personal computers, and there wasn't a lot of that going on. The shows. The big shows were the National Computer Conference, the NCC, and Comdex, and those were shows that were aimed at the overall industry. But Jim wanted to put local shows on in San Francisco, and so he did the computer fairs, and that's where Apple introduced the Apple II in 1976 there in Brooks Hall at the at Jim's computer fair show. And one of the celebrities that I met at the show, and then he became a customer of Byte Shops. It was he was the he did the Good Morning Vietnam. You remember that one?
Robin Williams?
Good Morning Vietnam, the movie.
Yeah, Robin Williams?
Yeah.
Robin Williams.
Yeah, Robin.
Okay.
Robin Williams. Yeah, Robin Williams was a big fan of the personal computers, and
oh wow, I didn't know
and he ran into him at the stores. I talked to him at the store. Obviously, I recognized him, and then when he came by our booth, we talked and so forth about stores and what was going on. But yeah, Robin, and then, like I said, would visit the Byte Shops that were closer to where he lived. But yeah, he was one. The other that you would put in celebrity category was the music guys. That music synthesis was one of the applications that was embracing the personal computers and what they could do with that. And so there were people, and notable names. I don't recall them all. I was never a music buff, but these guys were, big names in the music industry, and they would come into the stores and find out what was going on. And a lot of them would end up being published in, in the magazines. The magazine people like that, articles about celebrities and people, the general public would relate to, in terms of, these computers are going to be for everybody in every application out there. So, and these are examples of people that are getting involved in it. And, obviously, as video developed, it was, it was out of the personal computer industry where TV and, there were a lot of new startup companies that got involved in products. Kremimco actually was one of the manufacturers that started out early on in the hobby industry that developed industrial grade computers that were being used by the government and also industries, serious industries, like I said, television and government. California was running the ramp controllers with Kremimco personal computers, the Z1, I think it was called, Z1, Z2. They were using the Zilog microprocessor chip in there, which was compatible to the Intel 8080. So it ran all the same software. And so Cremimco zeroed in on the better of the processor chips. The higher performance one was the Zilog processor. So their line of industrial grade computers was that. It turned out in later years, Cremimco was actually very successful being able to export their Zilog, the Z Zilog computer that Cremimco had to China. And of all places, it was being sold over there, and obviously at some point replicated and so forth, as China typically does. But they were the largest manufacturer for computers in China at one point there. So, and a lot of this, was going on, of course, all before the IBM PC came out in the 80s, right? So we've got, 5, 6, 7 years of PCs that, were basically
lots of different brands, lots of different types, all different, all no real standards except maybe S100 bus kind of became a standard, and CPM, things like that. But
yeah.
So tell us about losing the Altair business. I understand that you talked with Ed Roberts directly when that happened.
When what happened?
When you lost the Altair business?
When I lost it?
Yeah, the Altair 8800. You lost your franchise, I guess, basically for selling Altair computers.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it goes back to the mentality of the people that were in the industry at the time. Okay, and Ed was, Ed was a serious businessman, but he wasn't. He had his way of doing business, and he came from the Air Force and then started MITS, and he was in order business, and then he got into the manufacturing of computers and so forth. But we were probably his biggest customer at one point, Byte Shops, and he decided that he wanted to create his own chain of stores through independent people. He called them the computer store. And so he actually got Dick Heiser, who was the first computer store, Arrowhead Computers, on Los Angeles area, to open up a MITS Altair computer store in Santa Monica. And he was one of the early MITS stores out there. But a requirement for becoming or staying as a dealer for MITS was that you couldn't carry competing products. Ed was very upset when he found out that the Byte Shop was carrying Processor Technology's Sol computer, and of course the biggest competitor to the Altair was the MSI 8080 computer, which Bill Millard and Ed Faber were selling out of Northern California, and they had cloned actually a better designed Altair computer in terms of its power supply capability and what kind of things you could attach to it. But it was all S100 bus standard, which was the Altair standard. So we were selling more MSI computers than we were Altair computers. And of course, we'd be happy to sell more Altair computers if we could get them, but they were always slow in delivery, and MSI was right there in our neighborhood, so we could just go over to their shipping dock and pick up our products. And actually, if you had cash in hand, you could get MSI to give you other people's orders that they hadn't shipped out yet. Because the whole industry.
As long as you had the money, huh?
Yeah, the whole industry was cash strapped, and so cash was king, and everybody wanted it, and so we took advantage of that with local suppliers. I had a few friends later on that were a little upset with me about the fact that when you shipped cash on delivery with UPS, it still took two weeks to turn that check around and get into your hands so you could deposit in your bank. So cash on delivery really wasn't as good as cash in hand, and so we took advantage of that, and with a lot of our suppliers got better delivery.
So that really leads into the next question very nicely. Who were your main competitors at the time, and what was your strategy to compete and try to dominate that retail space?
Yeah, well, obviously, Bill Millard comes to mind, and Ed Faber, because of the MSI relationship. They saw how successful I was in the Byte Shop operations, so they decided that MSI needed to have a computer retail operation company themselves, and so they started. They were located in Hayward, California, and so they went and opened up a store a block away from my Byte Shop in Hayward, and they called it Computer Shack. And Ed Faber, who was the marketing manager for MSI, became the president of Computer Shack operation. And of course, as soon as the word got out about Computer Shack, the Tandy lawyers were there to visit and talk about their trademarks with Radio Shack. And so a week later, they changed their name to Computer Land, and once again went to school on. Ed knew a lot about my operation and my stores and what was going on from our MSI relationship. So a lot of what we were doing went into the Computer Land program, and they became probably the major competitor for us. And that was early on. When the IBM PC came out later, of course, you had Business Land was created with people in the industry and venture capital, and of course the Pacific, the Bell, the phone company operating, their monopoly, the Bell monopoly was broken up into what they called baby bells, and so you had Pacific Bell and different. I think there were 13 baby bells that were created out of that, and they all wanted to get into the computer business as well as the phone business that they were already in. So they became competitors later on, in computer retail. But in my day, it really Computerland was the noticeable one that was out there. There were the independent stores that were there. I think you had mentioned Ray Burrell's operation in Ick of the Woods and so forth.
The data domain.
Not a lot of them were doing multiple stores, though. There was a computer store back in Massachusetts, and they did a couple of different stores. But most people were pretty happy with the operation that they had, and quite honestly, we're focused on literally selling products through their retail store. And not looking at a bigger picture of franchising and doing other things like we did with Byte. But and we were driven to doing the manufacturing and these other things, based on profitability. And once again, as I said, the whole industry was cash strapped, and so trying to get financing was a big part of what would consume your time.
Okay, and that's it for this particular episode of Floppy Days. I want to give out special thanks to Paul Terrell for spending all of his valuable time with me to talk about his time with the Byte Shop and all the things he did to help kickstart the fledgling home computer industry. I really appreciate all of the time that Paul spends with me, and there's much more content yet to come from Paul. I provided links in the show notes for all the great websites we discussed during this podcast. Just go to floppydays.com for the full list. Also, I really would like it if you would provide feedback for the show. You can do that at Apple Podcasts or on the website, via email at floppydays@gmail.com, via Twitter at floppydays, on Mastodon at floppydays @oldbytes.space, on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/floppydays, or on the Discord server whose link is at floppydays.com. Besides the primary locations of the website, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, Floppy Days is also available for streaming at TuneIn, Amazon Music, and Spotify. Until the next show, pull out a vintage computer and compute as if it were yesterday. Bye!